The time has come and Elden Ring is finally here, but before you jump into the game, you have a pretty big decision to make right at the start, and that is which class should you choose. Most guides that I could find at this point give very limited information, so I wanted to create a true deep dive video that reviewed each of Elden Ring's 10 starting classes in full detail so you could know exactly what to expect. In this video, we'll be looking at the starting stats, weapons, armor, as well as any starting spells or skills that each class has access to. Basically, everything you need to know about each class in Elden Ring is here, and timestamps will be provided below if you need to skip ahead to a specific class. Also, don't forget to check out our website for tons of brand new written content for Elden Ring. Link for all that is in the description. That's it, let's jump right into the video. Our first starting class in Elden Ring is the Astrologer, which is going to be a strong option for anyone who wants to cast spells in the game, as this class has the highest starting mind stat, as well as the highest starting intelligence. Mind is important for caster builds in Elden Ring, as this determines your total FP, or focus points, which is essentially your mana bar. Higher mind means you can cast more spells before running out, or needing to use a flask. So very good stat, especially for newer players because magic is so strong in Elden Ring. The Astrologer's high intelligence is equally important here, as a high int stat is going to be required to cast sorceries, which are intelligence-based magic spells. Now, in terms of weapons and armor, the Astrologer has just what you need to start your mage playthrough, including the Astrologer staff. This is what you need equipped in order to cast spells, any type of staff. Then for melee combat, should you need to, you also have a basic short sword and the Scripture wooden shield. Shield here is not great. You can see it only partially negates physical damage, but the sword itself is not bad, and it will actually give you access to the kick skill if used two-handed. The Astrologer armor provides minimal protection as well, so again, it'll be best to stay as far away from enemies as possible on this build and rely on your long-range magic spells. Speaking of magic, the Astrologer starts with two very strong sorceries, Glintstone Pebble and Glintstone Arc. Glintstone Pebble is a spell you can use for quite a while in the game. It gets stronger as your character does, and it also tracks and locks onto enemies, which is fantastic. And Glintstone Arc can be equally as useful. This is a great option for crowds, as it will cut through multiple enemies at once in a wide arc, damaging them all at the same time. Next up is the Bandit, a class that excels at fast-paced melee combat using dexterity-based weapons and ranged combat using bows. The Bandit has the third highest ranking dexterity stat in Elden Ring, starting at 13. This will best be used with weapons like knives and daggers, which scale better with dexterity rather than strength, as well as long and short bows, which also tend to scale primarily with dex. The Bandit also has the highest arcane stat in the game, much higher than any other class. Now, the word arcane here is a bit misleading. Usually something like that would have to do with magic, but in Elden Ring, the full effects of arcane are still a bit unclear. Now, this may be just another word for a luck stat, but it also could be much more complicated and help to scale things like bleeds or other status effects, or maybe certain rare weapon arts and spells. We don't know the full effects of arcane yet in Elden Ring, so this class could end up being very strong depending on what skills and weapons ultimately get discovered. Now, for starting gear, the Bandit comes prepared with the Great Knife, which causes your target to bleed. Then they have a Buckler Shield, which provides minimal protection, as well as a short bow with arrows. The Great Knife is a decent dex weapon to start the game with, whether you prefer to one-hand or two-hand it. Though if you two-hand it, you will unlock the weapon skill called Quick Step. This is actually great for circling around behind enemies, and the bow is actually a really great ranged option. You can lower an enemy's health from a distance or knock them out completely before they get to you. Finally, this class comes equipped with the Bandit armor set, which provides basic protection and a medium equip load. Next up is the Confessor class, which will be a good option for anyone looking to create a Paladin-style build in Elden Ring. First, the Confessor has good magic-based stats, including a high mind stat for that extra FP, and the second highest starting faith stat in the game, which will be needed for casting incantations, including healing spells, holy damage, and flame spells. Confessor also has a solid strength and dexterity, meaning if you want to wield something like a sword and shield for melee combat in addition to those incantations, you'll be all set to do so with this class, completing that Paladin build playstyle if that's what you're looking for. Now, speaking of sword and shield, the Confessor has one of the best starting shields in the game. This is called the Blue Crest Heater Shield. This is an amazing option, especially for new players, because it has 100% physical damage negation. This means as long as you block properly and have enough stamina, you should take 0 damage. The starting broadsword is also decent and comes with the square up skill. This lines up a quick running attack against your opponent that can do big damage. Now for spells, the Confessor class has access to the basic finger seal, which allows you to cast incantations. Now, the starting incantations are not great. First you have Urgent Heal, which restores health, and then Assassin's Approach, which is a buff that reduces fall damage and stealth detection of enemies. It's hard to tell how big of a difference this spell actually makes over just regular crouched stealth, but it doesn't seem to be that much. And finally, the Confessor's armor provides basic protection with a medium equip load at the start, but is also definitely one of the coolest looks in the game with that flowing black cloak. The next class in Elden Ring is called the Hero, and the Hero is going to be great for your classic Dark Souls strength-based build. In fact, this class has the highest starting strength stat in the game, so whether you prefer wielding a great sword, a battle axe, or a giant hammer, the Hero class can handle it all with relative ease. Hero also has the second highest vigor and endurance stats in Elden Ring, so this class has a great base in terms of those core survival stats of health and stamina. The Hero starts off with the Battle Axe, which is a fairly decent weapon. Two-handing the Battle Axe will give you access to the Wild Strike skill, which can be chain cast for a boost to DPS. The Hero also has a leather shield, which provides decent protection early on, but she'll probably just be two-handing with this class anyway. The Champion armor set that the Hero starts with provides basic protection with a medium equip load to start. Nothing special here. So if you are a bit more experienced with soul-type games, if you're comfortable with relying on rolls early on for avoiding damage, and if you want to build towards those big strength-based weapons, then the Hero is the class for you. Next up, we have the Prisoner. This class is going to be another great option for casters. Similar to the Astrologer that we looked at earlier, Prisoner has the second highest starting intelligence stat in the game, right behind Astrologer. Also better dexterity than the Astrologer, which is great for casters as well. What's interesting about this class is the rest of their offensive stats are relatively strong also, meaning that with the Prisoner, you could easily pivot into a strength build, or even a hybrid build like a spell blade later on. The Prisoner starts with the S-Stock, which is a thrusting sword similar to a rapier. This is a dex-based weapon with quick thrusting attacks, and a two-handed skill that charges forward called Impaling Thrust. In addition, the Prisoner has a Glintstone staff similar to the Astrologer as well. This is how you cast sorceries on the class, and also a small Rift Shield, which can be used for parries, and some damage negation while blocking. The Prisoner class's starting armor is limited to the Prisoner Iron Mask, which is heavy by the way, and the Prisoner chest and leg pieces, with nothing equipped on the arms, which is not ideal. Now finally, in terms of spells, the Prisoner comes equipped with one sorcery called Magic Glint Blade, which is a very slow casting projectile that forms in the air, then strikes your target after about 6 seconds, which is a big delay. So I'd say not a great starting spell, but it can be comboed with your sword, so it definitely reinforces that spell blade type feel. So if that's the build that you're looking for, definitely check out the Prisoner. Prophet is the next starting class in Elden Ring, and this one is going to be one of your best options for a pure faith build in the game. That's because Prophet has the highest starting faith stat overall at 16, and Prophet also has a high mind stat, leading to a greater FP pool than most other classes. If you want to go with a pure faith-based caster build in Elden Ring, Prophet will probably be your go-to class over something like Confessor, because you have less overall points wasted on other stats that you don't need, things like strength and intelligence. For starting equipment, the Prophet comes with a spear, a great long-range weapon that scales with both strength and dexterity. The two-handed skill here is Impaling Thrust, which can do big damage as it closes the gap on an enemy. The Prophet also has the Rickety Shield with minimal damage negation and the Finger Seal. Again, this needs to be equipped in order to cast incantations in the game. And speaking about incantations, the starting Prophet spells are a mixed bag here. The starting heal, which is just called Heal, can restore health in a large area, which affects other players in co-op and can even heal your summoned spirits. So that is nice, but the FP cost is huge for this spell, especially early in the game. Then there is another spell called Catch Flame, which is a close-range fire spell. Again, it is close-range, not ideal since you don't have a lot of armor on the Prophet class. And speaking of armor, you can take a look at it here. Prophet is definitely lacking in this department. The blindfold, robe, and pants offer almost no protection at all, so looking for an upgrade to this will be on your to-do list right away. All right, next up is the Samurai class, and this is going to be a great option if you want to pursue a non-magic playthrough in Elden Ring, because Samurai has very few wasted points in stats like Faith and Intelligence. What the Samurai class does have is the second highest dexterity in the game, as well as very solid martial stats in Strength, Vigor, and Endurance. This one is a bit similar to the Bandit class in terms of that fighting potential, but I see the Samurai more as a melee fighter because of its higher strength and endurance, and Bandit a bit more useful from range, but they're definitely similar. Now for your starting weapon, the Samurai begins with the Uchi Katana, which is basically a katana-style weapon that is capable of massive damage, especially if used in stealth or two-handed. And the two-handed skill here is called Unsheath. It's also extremely powerful and covers a nice distance as well. Then you have the bow and arrows, both regular arrows and flaming arrows on the Samurai class, which do big fire damage. Though you do have a fairly small number of those at the beginning, so you may want to save those for bosses. And finally, the Samurai armor is fairly good, offering average protection and a medium equip load at the start. All in all, this is a very versatile class, and it's recommended for both beginning and advanced players. Up next is the Vagabond, which is a heavy armor knight class in Elden Ring. Vagabond has the highest base vigor stat in the game, providing a bigger health pool to start, meaning you'll be able to tank better than any other class initially. Plus, high strength and dex provide great melee combat stats overall, letting you pick up just about any weapon you want in the game with relative ease. Now, speaking of weapons, the Vagabond starts with two solid choices, including the longsword and the halberd. Longsword combat is a bit quicker, while halberd is slower but has a longer range and a powerful stagger effect. The longsword comes with the square off skill, and the halberd comes with a skill called Charge Forth. Both of these are big bursts of damage, with Charge Forth being a longer range gap closer. Vagabond is quite tanky, as we mentioned, due to their heater shield, which, like the Confessor, allows them to negate 100% of their incoming damage as long as you can maintain your stamina. The Vagabond does come with full heavy armor, so if you're looking for that solid tank feel, Vagabond is definitely the way to go. Keep in mind that initially you will be at heavy equip load, which results in the dreaded Dark Souls fat roll. Basically, you have too much armor, and so your roll is much slower and less effective. You can level up your endurance at the start to raise your equip load stat, or another early trick is just to unequip your helmet, which has a lot of weight. Either way, the Vagabond class is a fantastic starting option, especially for new players to the Dark Souls franchise. Very easy to play and a lot of good survivability. Warrior class is up next, and this one is definitely a bit more advanced. Warrior has the highest starting dexterity in the game at 16, but relatively low physical stats otherwise, including lower strength, vigor, and endurance when compared to other classes. That being said, the Warrior is going to be a great option for more advanced players seeking to play a glass cannon style damage dealer with dex weapons, but you'll need to be great at avoiding damage yourself, so this class isn't necessarily recommended for beginners. Warriors are the only class that starts Elden Ring with two of the same weapon, that being scimitars, which will allow you to dual wield, also known as power stancing. Power stancing provides a completely new and powerful moveset for your character, as long as you're using two of the same type of weapon. You can see the two scimitars right here. They do very good slashing damage. I do recommend, if you're going to play the Warrior, that you do use dual wield, because you end up doing much more damage this way, and it does open up that new moveset with new combos by doing so. Two-handing a single scimitar does give you access to the spinning slash skill, but it's not nearly as impressive as something like dual wield jump or sprint attacks. Finally, the Warrior's armor choice here is the blue cloth cowl, vest, warrior gauntlets, and greaves. These offer decent protection at a medium equip load at the start of the game. Finally, we have the 10th starting class in Elden Ring called the Wretch. This is going to be your class if you want to completely start from scratch. Level 1, 10 points into each of the game's starting stats, and it's basically a blank slate where you can choose to build your character in any way that you want. The challenge with Wretch is not so much the stat allocation, but the starting gear. You have literally nothing but your underwear and a basic club on this class. Now, the club is not bad, actually. It's comparable to most starting weapons in the game, and while two-handing it, you actually get a pretty good skill called Barbaric Roar. This pushes enemies back and also increases your damage for a short period of time. The challenge really at the start when playing the Wretch class is the lack of armor and the lack of stats. You'll have basically no defensive power other than rolling away, and your health, stamina, and FP will be lower compared to the other starting classes. So I would say this is more an experienced player option. If you don't like any of the pre-made starting classes and you want to fine-tune your build and min-max the hell out of it, then the Wretch is going to be the class for you. And that is it. All 10 starting classes in Elden Ring explained. If you found this video helpful, make sure to crush that like button and let us know in the comments section what class you are starting with and why. If you want more information about classes, builds, spells, skills, and all things Elden Ring, head over to our website. That's rpgdojo.com. Link for that is in the description. And be sure to check out this video next, where we go over absolutely everything else you need to know about playing Elden Ring. And as always, thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you around in the next video.